Go.
Wholeness family. First thing we want to do is let's us give Eitai a very, pleasing and a very warm appreciation, for what he has revealed to us in the last few days. And I'm very, very thankful for what he has given us as a foundation as we continue to go forward into these higher realms of consciousness. That's the first thing I want to do. Thank him for that.
Okay.
It was great. This term that you introduced to us, so no luminous, on the money, on the money.
All right.
So with that, what I want to do is to give you the title of the class, but I'm going to have a lead in on to let us see where we are. The title of the class is going to be called Life as Consciousness, and Consciousness is Life, creates its own language. I state it again. Life as Consciousness, and Consciousness is Life, creates its own language. So we're going to we're going to lead into this because there is a real challenge for all of us online, and we really I want us to really focus on what I'm going to lead in with, because Eitai gave us a key, you know, and he said everything is sound and light, everything. And I know when we first heard that, some of us was wondering and trying to figure out how sound and light has anything to do with all what we think we understand today. But I want to put it within this context. You Many times you go to the dictionary and you will look at a word and they'll give you the meaning of the word, and they will say something to the fact of relating to.
Right.
Then they will say of or relating to the state of. Now, what do we think they're talking about? First of all, they are talking about consciousness. Okay, everything is centered around consciousness, and then they give you the definition. But we never made the connection that they were talking about consciousness.
That's
We
correct.
went on to follow the being that they gave us about the word that we were looking, but it had nothing to do with our state of relationship to our understanding of consciousness in terms of the word. We didn't make that connection.
Right.
So this is what I want to do today with us about, and each I had mentioned to you before about sometimes you think, well, I'm giving a different class from what he's given, but he keeps saying it's just another perspective of the same idea.
That's
And
right.
really it is. And what I want to talk about is what you call and what we would call the practical element of what he gave us yesterday of sono luminous. I'm gonna give you the practical element of it because that's where we are. That's the state of consciousness that we are. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, that's the state of consciousness that the majority of us are functioning from. And that state of consciousness is what you call practical. That's called give us a practical understanding, something that I can apply in my quote unquote daily life. Now, but what is your daily life? Your daily life is the what? It is the matrix, of the wound that you are practicing everything that you do every day. So you're familiar with that. You practice it to do what? What do we practice anything for, Eitai? We practice it to become what? Perfect, right?
That's correct.
So I want us to understand what we are talking about when we talk about this practical element. You are practicing every day how to be a perfect, you understand, physical being in the matrix of the simulated false, you understand, mind. That's what you're practicing. You are practicing it, and we have become perfect servants in their womb. And because I want us to understand, because see, if we don't understand these things, we just sort of overlook it and we'll continue on. Now, in this practical, realm of physicality, now this is a daily, you understand, practice or, practical application. These are terms that we use in trying to understand things on a higher realm of consciousness. Yet we are functioning on a very low vibrational frequency, trying to understand things at another level. And we are blaming, someone who is on a higher level for not being able to make contact with you on a lower level so that you can understand. Now, I want us to really, really focus here, because this is nothing. This is not a negative. This is not, you know, you know, um, getting on us about anything. I'm just trying to make us
Right.
grasp and understand what has actually happened to us and how vital it is for us to understand something that I'm going to call the state of the world. The state of the world is the state of the consciousness. And that state of consciousness, we've been told by, Power versus Force, David Hawkins, that 85% of humanity function below 200. So this is the state of the world. The worldview is below 200. Now here comes someone talking beyond the realm of consciousness of 200. There's just absolutely no way they're going to understand. And I see this happening, to us, and I'm concerned about it. And I asked Eitai just today we were talking about this remnant. It says only a remnant would be saved. So I was saying, well, Eitai, who can you really talk to about this? And he said, well, it's not very many, and we see that, So we're on this line. We refer to ourselves as the family. We have to really, really think about that, because, the value of this family, on this online family, you really, you understand, don't have a relationship with anybody else like that.
Right.
I mean, I want us to really feel this, and so that this becomes more genuine in what we are doing on this line every day than just, oh, we just on here having some classes. Now, see, Aharone is teaching something, Eitai is teaching.
Right.
I've been told that you just want to teach. You don't want to listen. Man, I do more listening than do I do anything. When I'm around people, I don't talk, I listen.
Right.
That's just a fact.
Right.
So, and some of my greatest revelations have come from people talking and me listening, not me talking.
Right.
But I'm saying this to say that we gotta start to really value one another, because it's not a lot of people that you can even broach this kind of conversation about here without offending somebody.
Right.
And I hope and about no means I'm trying to get anybody online. I'm trying to make us understand the value of what we have, what we developed on.
Correct.
So using that as my lead in, I want to go to kind of give us a little insight into what I'm talking about life as consciousness, and consciousness being life creates its own language. As I stated, Eitai have done a masterful job with, what the ancestors has given him in terms of expressing these things to us, that has caused us to see things quite differently from our personal families, friends, etc. And so it becomes a major challenge in trying to, you know, articulate it to the few that you can,
Right.
you interact with, and you do interact with, because again, what I just said about this practical practice that we have been doing every day within the false matrix. We want things to be practical, and I keep saying to us that the key to simplistically understanding has to do with just understanding two words: dualism and holism. It keeps it real simple. Dualism and holism. Organic, inorganic. Organic, and that which is not organic. So looking at everything is sound and light. We must remember that every sound vibrates on its own frequency level of consciousness, and so does light. Now, Akamari brought up a point the other day, and I verified for him, and I'm going to take this point and continue to expound upon it so that it would be hopefully appreciated at the highest level. Akamai brought up the point concerning the different levels of consciousness that various ones of us exist on, and because of where they exist, we're not bothered. The one that's on a different level, and I verified that he was right concerning that. And I'm going to use this as our lead in today. What I want to do is to expand upon that concept. All us on this line refers to ourselves as the family. And we are all vibrating on different levels of consciousness as energy frequencies.
Right.
This is why the energy level of 250, hear me now, energy level 250 refers to neutrality, becomes so critical. For this is the level that we can really appreciate, value, and benefit from once we understand that energy level of 250. Once you accept that, because what happens at the level of 250, it causes you to what? Get outside of positions that you're going to take based upon somebody don't understand this and somebody do understand it. And, in other words, it takes you out of this, what we call polarity.
Right.
And it takes you out of the position of always being rigid, cannot agree, cannot move from where you are. All of these are things that has been hindering us tremendously. That then says to us as to, quote unquote, where we are when we become rigid and cannot interact with someone that's on a lower level. Then that means then that we are just what? Intellectually, trying to understand things from this concept of the mind. And we constantly keep saying, the mind, you got to bypass that. You got to let it go.
Right.
Got to let it go. So, level 250, neutrality. At this level, we are able to understand how the cycles defined as time becomes transient and or eternal, all based upon various levels of consciousness called cause and effect. Now, let's look at this now. See, because we've been talking about this prophetic time cycle. Well, when you look at the prophetic time cycle, you are looking at a vertical or horizontal conceptualization of time, up, down, or even horizontal.
Correct.
You know. Now, but that's all transit. It has a beginning and it has an end. But now when we look outside of the horizontal or vertical, and we look at the cyclical cycles, no beginning and no end. And this is what Eitai explained to us yesterday about this concept of form and void, without form and void. Because you didn't see something in the physical realm, it's perceived that there was no life.
Right.
But he explained life was at rest in an organic, holistic form. But then it moved from rest into motion and activity that brought with it, you understand, quote unquote, form for things. And now once that came into existence, this is what everybody believes is the beginning of life. But I'm going to go back to my title, Life as Consciousness, and Consciousness is Life. All of this was before movement. All before movement, all before activity, existed from, this non-physical form, and then moved into physical form, and that's what everybody perceived life to be. I'm gonna hold right there. Ask if there any questions or any comments. But we want to walk through this very slowly. Any comments? Any question? No question, no comment. Because we gotta understand.
Nasik.
Go ahead.
I was just with you with the Tyler itself, because all we can see is what I'm seeing is we're considering life after movement. We because that's all that we can see right now, because there was no we don't even consider
right.
sound, because I mean you was talking about sound, because I was thinking about even when a baby is in the mother's womb, and the first thing that's developed that she's able to hear is the sound, because of
Get cut off.
Yeah, he dropped off. He's been having problems with that, Nasik. So go on ahead. He'll get back on.
Okay, so what we want to do now is magnify these conceptualizations of time, where we perceive time to start with, quote unquote, you coming into the physical.
Right.
So once you come into the physical, and that's the beginning of time, then you understand when the physical moves, that's the end of time for you.
That's right.
So we got to understand the value of what Eitai gave us, so that we can see what immortality really is. Got to be able to see this. We got to see this. Life had to exist, before the material, in order for what? It to what? Manifest into material. That's just, if you want to use the law of relativity, that's just relative. Other than that, then the physical is responsible for creating life. And we know that ain't true.
That's correct.
That's correct. I don't know where I got lost. My phone shut off. Anyway, but
No,
that's what I was asking. Life before this physical existing.
Right. Life creates the physical, and not the physical creates the life.
Correct.
Right, right.
So this is why I title it Life as Consciousness. And then I go on to what? Say consciousness is life. So there is no difference between life and consciousness. Okay? And that life, that consciousness creates its own language. We're going to get to that. Continuing on. We have to understand our level of divinity. It is all centered within you as the source of consciousness, where it all begins. Within the lower realms of consciousness, you are exposed to a vertical up and down cycle of time. In other words, the timeline was straight, whether it was horizontal or up and down. Within the upper realm of consciousness, you are enlightened to the cyclical levels of no beginning and no ending. This is in the higher realms or the upper realms of consciousness. We ain't talking about the lower realm. Now, this then makes us understand why at the level 20, you what? First of all, at that level, according to Hawkins, you are in a position of despising life.
Right.
You really want to go out of here. Get out of here.
Right.
Because things are so miserable at the lower level. What do you want to be around for? This is real, family. This is real. This is real.
And people say,
say it again. The lower levels of time cycles, which are vertical and horizontal, they are transit. And this is the timeline that the aberrant man functions within, and what we now call prophecy. Did you hear what I just said? What we now call prophecy. Prophecy is locked into a what? Transit cycle of time, a beginning and an end. I know we ain't never heard this before. And again, I'm like Eitai. I'm not saying you to believe it or accept one thing. Research it for yourself.
That's correct.
Research it for yourself and verify it for yourself, or verify it not to be true. So we're talking about what we call prophecy is locked into a time cycle. So why would there be a prophecy if you were talking about immortality? There ain't no prophecy, of immortality. What you going to prophesy the beginning and the end for if it's immortality? I want us to hear, because we got to put this in a practical, because that's where we are in our practical understanding. We want something practical. So that's my role, to put it in a practical perceptive so that we can what? Practically practice this on a daily basis. Hopefully, we will then come to understand it.
Okay.
So, as we continue on, this time cycle has a beginning. We're talking about this prophetic time cycle, has a beginning and a ending. Now let me show you what the end of it is. See, because I'm not just saying it's a beginning and the end.
Right.
We can give you time cycles to put it in motion. It ends with you bringing an end to dualism. That's when it ends. There ain't no prophecy that's going to end anything if you don't bring an end to dualism. Ain't no prophecy bringing an end to anything other than you what? Prophetically understand that you have been placed in a dualistic world,
right,
of good and evil, right and wrong, up and down. And if you don't bring an end to that, then that prophecy will never be fulfilled. Absolutely. That's what we call prophecy. Now, I'm hoping we're understanding now. If you don't, please say something. and we're going to use a scriptural reference. Matter of fact, we're going to two of them back to back. We're going to go Genesis 14 and 18, Genesis 14 and 18, Hebrews 7, 1 through 3. Genesis 14, 18, Hebrews 7, 1 through 3. Genesis 14 and 18. And Melchizedek, king of Salem. And what is Salem? Salem, is what we call Jerusalem. Jerusalem. That's where the word Salem comes from. Okay? Priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the king and blessed him. Okay? Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Verse 18. I misread that. 18. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. That's Genesis 14, 18.
Right.
Hebrews 7, 1 through 3 begins with, for this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him. Verse 2, to whom also Abraham gave a tenth part of all, first being by interpretation king of righteousness. Now, this king of righteousness is king of wholeness.
That's right.
King of perfection. King of divinity, oneness and unity. All right? And after that, also king of Salem, which is king of peace. All right? Verse 3, without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days or end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, abideth a priest continually. And this is Hebrews 7, 1, 3. So here we say he had no beginning, no end, no father, no mother. Now, again, here we go back to what Eitai gave us yesterday, this concept without form and void. See, when you bring form and you bring image into existence,
that's right.
What you're bringing into existence, something now to what? Produce and continue bringing forth form or bringing things into existence through some physical form. Whether it be an animal, dog, horse, cat, it doesn't matter. That's the form, that's the image that's used to what? Perpetuate that physical existence. But now, that's in the physical realm. That's in the lower realm. But in the upper realm, we're talking about perfection, unity, and oneness, all locked in wholeness and divinity at rest. At rest, in what we would call the energetic or the spiritual realm or the non-physical realm. Okay? So, we understand this, and we're going to go now to the book of Daniel, the 12th chapter, to tie all of this in, Daniel 12, 1 through 3. This is all showing how this prophetic time cycle that we've gotten trapped in and, trying to articulate our way out of here without understanding the very, very beginning of how we got in it. It just ain't going to happen. It just ain't going to happen. 12th chapter, Daniel. And at that time, and everybody said, well, what time is that? What time is that? And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince who standeth for the children of thy people. There shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation. Now that point right there, a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation. So we want to literally interpret that, that never was a nation. So if it wasn't now a nation, where were the people at? Where was the literal physical manifestation at? Okay? Even to that same time, and at that time, thy people shall be delivered. Everyone that shall be found written in the book. So, of course, we used to interpret that to mean you have to write your name in the book because, but we didn't understand that we really represented the book. We really represented the book. We are the book, if you want to use that in that conceptualization. Continuing on, verse 2. And many of those that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And let's go back to this prophetic time. Everybody, you understand, that's trapped in the dualistic realm of the false mind matrix of this reality. Everybody is trying to calculate this time cycle from, quote unquote, a physical beginning and a physical end. So that's why now you can understand why everybody's talking about the end of this country and the end of that country, and Russia and America gonna fight, and it's gonna be the end, and there ain't gonna be nobody left but Hebrews and all of that. You see where we're coming from now?
That's right.
So now, gotta follow here, because you see, if we follow these timelines are not in harmony with what? This cyclical timeline. One is transit and one is eternal. But we don't talk about eternal because that's not something that we understand. That's not something we've been practicing. That's not something that's practical. Immortality is non-practical.
Right.
We have not been practicing that on a daily basis in our physical structure. We haven't been practicing. We don't really believe that. We really don't understand that. Follow me now. Verse 3. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to bring out a couple points here so that we can see the reference above is referring to not the reference. This reference is referring to those that are not aware. Those that are not aware, they are in respect to those that are not aware, they are not aware of their divinity because their double mind or dual way of seeing things. They are not aware of this cycle of immortality.
That's correct.
They're not aware of that. In this realm of duality, there has to be a beginning and an end. So that there's no awareness of, immortality. This is something that we are trying to grasp. As the narrative reveals it, some will awake to everlasting life, and some to shame and contempt. Now, the everlasting life is the awakening, and for your, research, the number for awakening is 6974. 6974. And it's pronounced Kutz. And it means abruptness of starting up from sleep to the unity of their feminine and masculine elements as one entity. An abruptness of starting up from sleep to the unity of their feminine and masculine elements as one unity. That's what has to happen. Returning to their divinity and wholeness. As for those of ashamed, those that of ashamed, 2781, shame. And that is pronounced kerfar. Kerfar. And it means to pull off, to expose, to betroth. Now, this is your key point here. To betroth in a mutual promise of a future marriage. Now this is what we've been able to actually verify online. We invite people on, and they come on and they listen, and they'll talk about various elements of what we talk about. But It's like mutual agreement to come on and listen. But this concept of a future marriage, where they'll get back to it and they ain't, whatever, it never happens. In other words, this marriage, this union of becoming one, with one's feminine and masculine self, that marriage does not happen to very, very many people at all. That never happens within the season promise. This is what happens during, and we're going to see how the seasons, are linked to it. The season of the cycles of time that, things are supposed to occur within. You can be out of season, and then you're ready to do something, but it's out of season. So if you want to eat avatikim or watermelons in the winter, you out of season. You're not going to eat them. You follow what I'm saying? But today, I guess I can't say that because they got watermelon today that don't have no seeds. They grow year round.
Right.
But we're talking about within the natural cycles. Right? Those that have contempt, hear me, contempt is 1860. And the word is there are on. I guess there are one. DERAWONE. And it means to repel, to reject, to repose, to object, to have an aversion, and to avoid or to turn from it. Now, this is exactly where we are in terms of humanity accepting the teachings that we online is what providing to get us all out of the situation. But there are all kinds of promises, but no one, very few of us follow through with this and make this a what? A practical reality. So as a result, the season for you transitioning out of a low level of, field dominance of common consciousness, you never make it out because what? That cycle passes on. And then you find yourself what? In the same predicament, at the next season that rolls around, So we can see now how reincarnation plays such a major role within what? Keep bringing you back into the same cycle where you never ever able to what? Unify and marry the elements, you understand, of yourself, feminine and masculine, as one whole divinity. And so you never ever able to reach and come into contact with the cycles of the eternal. So we still remain in the cycles of the transit. So this prophetic time cycle is directly connected to keeping us in these cycles of the perpetual reincarnation in the physical realm. Never ever getting out of that, you understand, low level of consciousness, And so as a result of that, we continue to misunderstand and improperly interpret the cycles, that has been set in motion by the ancestors for us to transition out of dualism, out of dualism. So we're going to hold at this point and ask if there's any questions, any comments. So it splits things and make things be what? Give you what you would call belief and action. You got two things. You got to believe something you believe in your mind or in your thought process, and then you got an action. And everybody been trying to unify their belief with their action. And you have children, you ask a child, well, why'd you do that? And you don't know. Because this concept of a belief and this concept of what his action, his behavior, that's the one thing that we're trying to unify. You can't unify them except they are not. If they in duality, they're not unified. If they split, they are not one. So we got to get back to everything being one and everything being connected. And when we understand how all things are connected, then we get away from what? Physical and non-physical. We see one reality, and that is what? The energy of life. It ain't physical, it ain't physical. It's all one thing, But in our physical plane, or our lower level of consciousness, we find it very difficult to see how things unify. We see things, from a dichotomy. Things are never unified. Things are never complementary. They're always in opposition to one another. That's what we got to get out of. And that's what the mind does for us. Okay?
Yeah.
That's if I may, everything that we've been exposed to from birth until now and beyond has that we are exposed to promotes, if you will, an imbalance. Okay, we must therefore focus on ourselves, right, to be able to achieve a balance. And because to focus on ourselves, we must do that 24/7. Because when I say we're exposed to symbols. These people know, the aberrant people know these symbols, and they use these symbols, like in the McDonald's sign or the General Motors signs, or if you drive down the road, you see signs of the Masons and so forth, and the Knights of Columbus and all those people. You see these signs, and you don't know that these symbols are in you, right? They're in you. So if they're in you, that means these symbols are triggering something in you. Therefore, you have to check yourself. And when I say check yourself, you must be always aware, okay, of this imbalance so that you can become balanced. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Amari, just to add to that, if there's an imbalance, that means there is another part that's not in harmony. Is that correct?
Correct.
An imbalance, that means what? Things are not unified. They're what? They're separated or they're divided,
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
if something is divided instead of it being unified, that gives you what? Two perspectives of things, as opposed to one perspective as one holistic idea. And it's hard for us to what? Understand that, when we are trying to view things, as I stated earlier, from a practical point of view within your daily life of doing this and that, trying to see how you can connect to something outside of you, as opposed to you not understanding that you are everything and everything within you. Hard for us to understand that, but that's a major, major challenge for us to overcome this duality or this division, this double mind, good and evil, God and Satan, right and wrong. The question for me,
Absolutely.
to the family, is why do we want to accept that it's like that? Why is it? Why wouldn't we accept that things are connected? That's kind of like how I always look at it. Well, why do I want to accept that it's divided as opposed to it being united?
No, you know why? It's because, like you said, the mind. That when I listened to you closely, and what I understood is that the mind is what gives us this dualistic perspective because of what the programs that have been encoded in our consciousness, into our mind.
Wholeness.
That's right. That's right.
Wholeness. Can I say something, please?
Please.
What really has been beneficial to me is, as we've okay, I'm gonna say this to the sisters and to the brothers, but to the sisters right now, is that the marriage within us is accepting the masculinity with our femininity. Just like we say to the brothers about the feminine power, and I've been going and saying that out loud to every sister. I'm talking about organic, authentic sisters. I mean, people walk up to me, like in the post office yesterday, just to give an example, tap me on the back, and this was a woman from Germany, and she says, "You're beautiful. Your outfit is beautiful." And I'm like, okay. So I gave her a hug and told her that she was beautiful. Then behind her, two authentic women came in, and one happens to be a seamstress. But anyway, she came and told me, she says she designs clothes, and she says, "What you're wearing is beautiful." And she gave me her card, and I gave them a hug, but told them, I said, this is our time. This is the millennium of the women, the divine women of power. And their faces lit up. So what I'm saying to us all, that we have to, within ourselves, this is what I've been getting from this, is have to accept and embrace our marriage within ourselves. And the other thing is that I understand my heart, but I've been like this since I was a child, but I didn't know how to facilitate or how to use the power. I did not know until now how to use that power. And it's been my heart. And it actually had affected my physical heart, because that's what we feel. And Nasik, you can chime in if I'm incorrect in anything that I'm saying, but this is being my experience right now. My being is what my inner standing is, and that's what I'm doing and telling everyone. I'm working on myself, because it's still, I know it's a cliche, a work in progress, but I have to continually work on this, and it's every day, because we're surrounded by a dualistic environment in the physical. That's why we have to be alone at sometimes to raise our divine consciousness to the level that we embrace this, and it becomes our eternity. I don't want to say our every day. I don't want to limit it, but this language is deficient, and it just does not express what I feel.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Our reality, maybe.
Mr. Todd, only thing I'd like to say today, just expand upon what you said. Let's take the physical, because that's what we practice, and that's what we perceive it to be practical. You know, we practice it daily in the physical matrix, and we see that is what we call practical. Anything outside of that, I guess it's become impractical. I don't know what we would call it, but nevertheless, let's deal with that in respect to the male and the female in the physical realm. We only want to come together with the opposite sex when there is some kind of physical attraction or sexual desire for cohabitation with the opposite sex. There is no desire outside of that, because what? You don't see the necessity of having a relationship with the physical man if you're a woman, or man without woman. That's the practical duality and oppositional position that the physical realm puts you in. So as you were saying, to accept that this is my other element that would make me one whole unity. And we've been using the term, what's the term, Eitai?
Sonoluminescence.
No. When you're one unit instead of being male or female.
Oh, androgynous.
Androgynous.
Right.
We don't know about that, and we don't want to address these things. If you being one, you want to be one in the spirit, whatever that means to you from your religious perspective, about a relationship with somebody, which is all false. And we don't want to accept that. So that's why we struggle with the realm of duality. So I just wanted to add to what you were saying about that. We got to accept that's me. The other element, you understand, of my reality, of my divinity, is the feminine and the masculine being merged into one unit. That once you do that, you overcame duality. So
that's basically what I was saying. I've been described as androgynous all this time, but it didn't mean a lot to me then, but it means so much now.
Glory.
We have to embrace that.
Absolutely. Got to embrace it.
Nasik.
Yes, sir.
I'm listening, and I was just saying, when you said about that one in spirit, is that's part of the trickery of the mind.
Right.
Although we're saying one in spirit, but again, you are talking about spirit as something that's outside. And you're saying you one with it, but unconsciously your mind is tricking you because you still have not understood that all's in.
Right.
When we go in,
it's a word that I don't like to use, because exactly what you're saying, Kalaya, it does not do what we think it does supposed to do, and that is what unify. It don't do that. Don't take you to no higher realm of consciousness like we perceive it to, but that's the term they gave us. That's the term, So, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Exactly what you're saying. I don't use it. I only use it to try to help, because I know in our practical language that we use, we will accept spirit. We have a problem with energy. We have a problem with consciousness, but we would prefer to say God, So again, it's always the teacher's problem, It's always the teacher's problem. It's your problem. It's my problem. We ain't making it plain. But nevertheless, I love it.
It's like Ms. Hurrah mentioned, that this language that we're using is really inadequate. It's really inadequate and it's very difficult to try to articulate these fifth dimensional realities, with language. But we have to struggle through it.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna go just a little further, and then we're gonna close it. Now we're getting into the element of the class itself. Life as consciousness, and consciousness as life creates its own language. What we're going to explore is the fundamental understanding of life as consciousness and consciousness being life. There is no existence of one without the other. There is no existence of one without the other. Life as consciousness and consciousness as life. There's no existence, one without the other. The role of life as consciousness and consciousness being life plays in creating its own language. The role life as consciousness and consciousness being life plays in creating its own language. And we start this portion with life as consciousness and consciousness being life move from rest to animation. Moves from rest to animation. Now, let's look at the word animation. Now, here we go. To give spirit and support to. That's the word they give. And the word is 1538. The number is 1538. To give spirit to and support to encourage, to give life to. Now, they don't say life until the second definition.
Right.
They don't start off saying life. They say to give spirit
Right.
to, and support to encourage. Then they say definition two, to give life to. Then it says B, to give vigor and zest to. Now in 3 it says to move to action. To move to action. That's animation. Now let's go back to at rest. You know, moving, and they'll tell you any real study about this brain and this mind, they will tell you a brain is just a physical piece of flesh. It can't do nothing until it's animated. Okay? And consciousness is what animates it. You know, this is the sound, you know, that Eitai was talking about, moving from rest into activity, into motion. And when it's moved into motion, it causes the brain to what? Move into motion. And when that happens, they call that the mind. That's what they call the mind. And so again, Kallias was correct. They tricked us with this word spirit, you know, giving us the perception is that the mind is responsible for everything. And it's not. It's not. Continuing on. We must no longer permit the outdated Western thinking to provide for us our own line, family, community, and humanity, their worldview to be accepted as our worldview as truth. I'll state that again. We must no longer permit the outdated Western thinking to provide for us our own line, family, community, and humanity, their worldview to be accepted as our worldview as truth. We can no longer do that. For if we allow them to give us the Western worldview of thinking, their worldview to be our worldview of truth, we will never get out of the predicament.
Correct.
It's outdated. It's outdated. Their worldview of dualism is outdated. It didn't have its date. The end has come. We must have an immediate paradigm shift in our worldview from dualism to holism. Yakima, we must have an immediate paradigm shift in our worldview from dualism to holism. Therefore, it becomes imperative we take on the key tenets of Western thinking that all life ultimately reduces to physics. We got to get out of that. Biocentrism, in its place, offers the revolutionary view that biology is primary. Biology is primary. That life creates the universe and not the other way around. Biocentrism means relating to life, having life as its principal fact. This is where we are, family.
Nasik,
Yes, sir. Talk to me.
life is the only reality.
Absolutely.
Life is the only reality. See, we have been given, I've been listening very closely to, not only what you've been saying, but to the responses and then reflecting back. See, we've been given this, especially within the kingdom, we've been given this definition of and we have accepted this definition of something called death. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. There is just life in motion and life at rest. That is the only reality, family. Life in motion and life at rest.
Yes. Yes.
Simple. Simple. We have this perspective that is profoundly physical.
Yes.
Profoundly physical and low frequency.
Absolutely.
And when we think that the physical ending, the end of physical existence, is the end of life. But
That's right.
that is at the end of descent and the end of the fall and the end of the separation. And so
yeah.
our perspective on this has been inverted. If we think
Okay.
that the physical form is our highest expression, and
Yes.
that we want to do everything to hold on to that and preserve that, which Nasik is practical. it's practical, but it's not an eternal perspective.
Right. Right.
You said a couple of things. You said life at rest. That's the end of separation, end of
Because
the end of physical.
that was the beginning. The beginning was life. That's what the scriptures tell us. No
Mm-hmm.
no form, no movement until consciousness and life moved. Until
Right.
it moved,
Became animated. Yeah.
it became animated.
Mm-hmm.
So life is the eternal principle. I think this is what we're saying. It is the eternal principle. Either life
Right.
in motion or life at rest. There's no death. This is what our ancestors told us.
Yeah.
And they referred to it, Nasik, as the afterlife.
Right. Right. See, again, Eitai, what you just said, you see, you came away back to the mind conceptualization of duality,
Right,
life, death.
right,
Yeah. You got two things. You got life and you got death.
right.
But if you never see things as being dual, There is no end. It's nothing but life at rest or life in motion.
Right.
Very simple. Very simple. Excellent.
Absolutely. See, what we are accustomed to is this timeline that they have past and the present.
Right.
But there is no timeline.
Right.
Right.
Look at it as a timeline is a straight line, but life is a circle. There is no beginning and there is no end.
Yeah.
I think
So-
we're beginning to see it now. See.
I think so too. Yeah. Excellent. So, continuing on, I said we got to take on this tenet, of this Western thinking,
Right.
because this is where our problem, lie. Said within this comes the challenge of an external God named Yahweh, being responsible for all things in the creation. Let us not forget that this is the foundation of Western thinking with which the creed of Christianity was developed at the Nicene Council in 325. Now, we got to understand what took place. We did this in this Adamic creed that we just went through.
Right.
Continuing on. Life as consciousness and consciousness is life move from rest to animation. Thus, we are able to witness this concept in the Genesis narrative. Genesis, the first chapter, verses 1 through 3. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, so if in the beginning, that was what? A beginning, or what we in Hebrew say, a beginning as opposed to the beginning, but it was a beginning.
Right.
And then what? And it is when the earth is created as they state now. But now here's your key, verse 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So now what can happen right here is that based upon verse 1, we got a beginning. And if we got a beginning, we got an end. But Eitai just explained very, simplistically, that life was at rest. It wasn't the beginning.
Right.
It always exists, but it was just at rest. And at rest into movement is what brought in the quote unquote the physical elements that we are talking about. But that wasn't the beginning. That wasn't the beginning. Life always existed. It's like he said, life is the only reality. Death, you understand, and they gave us that concept. They gave us the dualistic perspective of looking at life. One is life and one is death. But it was all centered around this physical body. Continuing on to the verse 3. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Then we give a, commentary. Here we are challenging the contemporary worldview of Western thinking in respect to the term chaos. According to the ancient means divinity at rest. Undefined, unformed, unconstructed, or formless. The concept of tohu, vabohu, without form and void, or formless, undistinguishable, meaning no form or image of the physical existence. Thus, consciousness is at rest as pure consciousness, pure energy, as wholeness/divinity. Before consciousness move from a state of rest, cause an activity or movement as the creative process in the broader sense. the creative process is the movement of darkness, dark energy of melanin consciousness upon the face of the deep from its state of rest into activity, the creation of physical matter, thus inclusive of humanity from tohu, that which is formless, without dark melanin consciousness as sound, creating light, waves, and particles that became the simulated false mind matrix as the wound of reality. So as it moved from formless through sound, creating light, waves, and particles that became the simulated false mind matrix as the wound of reality. This provided the form for all things in the physical to continue to be brought forth. Therefore, whenever we see the word Yah, God, we must understand that these terms are not related to anything else other than the inner consciousness as sound, to light, to waves and particles as the human or humanity. So we're talking about a movement that was at rest into activity, causing, you understand, the process of how things came into physical existence. So that's what we were explaining in Genesis 1:1-3. This makes us really appreciate what Eitai brought yesterday about this sono luminous concept.
Right.
It's so profound when you understand how there's cycles and process of things coming from, you understand, no form, no image into form and image. Continuing on, if there is no questions, matter of fact, what we're going to do, we're going to stop it here and ask if there's any questions to pose.